everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Shauna. If you're new here, welcome. If you are a loyal subscriber, welcome back. Thanks for always tuning into my videos. Been a little MIA, and I know I said I wouldn't do that this year, but I have very good reasons, and hopefully we'll be filming and posting a video about all of that soon. I've got a lot of things that are going on, and I want to keep you guys informed and tell you about it. But also I'm kind of at the mercy of waiting for answers. So with that being said, I'm so sorry that I have been MIA. I decided to just do my February and March reading wrap up all in one video, so we just get it done in one go. I also read basically all of one series, so I mean that would kind of cut the video short anyway. So I just decided to do all of them in one and also tell you a little bit about the manuscripts I've been reading. And yeah, so let's just jump right into it. Okay, starting off with February, what I read in February. It's already April, I cannot believe that. Where did the time go? So first off, what I read in February, I actually listened to this as an audiobook, and it is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. So this one is a thriller. Sorry, you guys, if I am trying to remember, I'm trying to remember exactly what this one was about. I know it was a thriller, it was suspenseful, it was kind of mysterious, kind of like a mystery, but it was at the beginning of February that I read this, so I'm drawing a little bit of a blank of exactly what happens. So this is centered around an island off of the coast of Ireland, and a wedding is happening there with a man who, the groom is a like famous reality star who is like an adventurer kind of guy. So he has his own show and he's basically surviving in the wild with all of that. So he's kind of known for that, but he's not like super famous, but he's still well known. He would be recognized on the street. And the bride is she's not famous or anything, but she meets him and they fall in love, and you know, they get married actually pretty quickly, or they want to get married pretty quickly. So we are going to this island off the coast of Ireland for their wedding, and it's in a bunch of different perspectives. So you read the bride's perspective, you read her sister's perspective, which she is the maid of honor, and you read through the plus one's perspective, Hannah's, which I loved her. So you read through Hannah's perspective as well, and forgive me because I don't remember anybody else's names. So that should kind of tell you how I felt about this book. So let's just finish with what the book is about. You read through a bunch of different people's perspectives who are coming to this island for the wedding, including you read through the bride's perspective as well. And basically it's kind of jumping back and forth in time and through a bunch of different people's perspectives. So it can be a little hard to grasp, especially if you're listening to it as an audiobook, which I did. So it's hard to follow in the beginning, but then you start to catch up. So I will give the author props on that, because after I was kind of able to kind of map out who was who and what was happening, I easily fell right into it and was pretty intrigued. So the whole time you're wondering what's happened, because it's jumping forward to the night of the wedding, and these people are going out into this massive storm, trying to find, you know, there was a blackout because the storm is really bad. So they're going out to find somebody. Somebody has gone missing. I believe they find a body somewhere. And they're basically just trying to figure out what the heck is going on this island, because it's a very creepy, remote island. Nobody else lives there. You also read through the wedding planner's perspective, which that was kind of cool too. And yeah, so basically you're just kind of trying to piece together everything as it's going along, but you're obviously only given a little bit of information at a time. So I know a lot of people said this moved really slow for them, and I can see that. I understand where people are coming from, where it's like, you know, it's moving too slow. I get it, but that's also like all thrillers and mysteries for the most part. I mean, they have to give you some suspense, like draw out that tension to make it suspenseful. So I understand why it was that way, but I understand how that's frustrating, because I was a little frustrated with it. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. I'm just gonna give that rating now because I loved it. I loved reading it. I was telling my boyfriend Tony about it. the whole time I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, like, we just found this out. I need to tell you about this. So he was almost reading it right along with me because I was telling him like point by point what was happening. But I will say the ending was so lackluster for me. I don't feel like it, I mean, I can definitely say I didn't see it coming. I didn't expect that ending. But at the same time, I felt a little let down. It felt like it was, you know, because it was moving so slow and we were progressing slowly and only given information piece by piece by piece, that I was expecting a bigger explosion at the end. And it kind of just went up and up and up and up and up and up and up throughout the book. And I was excited about what was going to happen. And then it just kind of fell really flat. So I was a little disappointed by that. So that's why I'm still giving it 4 stars, because it wasn't my favorite, but the rest of, like, if the ending had been changed slightly, if we had been given a little bit more of a conclusion and a wrap up of everything, I could easily have given this 5 stars. But I couldn't forgive the ending. I couldn't look past it. So that was the first book I read in February. The second book I read in February was Lore by Alexandra Bracken. This is a new book, and it is about Greek mythology, essentially. Like, it's based off of Greek mythology, and our main character's name is Lore. Obviously, that's the name of the book. Her name is Lore. So she is basically a descendant of a bloodline where, backing up. So in Greek mythology, it's a new kind of spin and a new take on it. So basically once every 10 years, is it? 10 years or so, the gods, you know, are kind of smite down by Zeus, who rules over all of them. And again, this was 2 months ago, guys. I'm so sorry. Basically, they're just cast down from godhood and made to roam the earth for 7 days. And basically, they're taken, like their powers are taken. They're not godlike anymore. They're mortal. So basically, anyone can kill them is what it means. So it's a hunt that happens every, is it 7 years? 7 or 10 years, I don't know. It's a certain amount of time. You know, every few years, these gods are cast down, and basically these bloodlines go after the gods to try to become a god themselves, because if you kill a god, you become a god. So that's what this is, and Lore, our main character, is a part of one of those bloodlines who hunts down the gods. Her entire family was killed during the last hunt, so she has kind of sworn that off. And her best friend, she thought died and was murderously killed. So she swore off that life. She said, I'm not going to do anything with that anymore. I'm going to live my own life, be free, be me. I don't want to have any part of this. Well, the start of the next hunt begins, next hunt begins, and she, of course, is drawn right back into that world. So you find out, you know, all of these things, and because a god or goddess, I guess, shows up on her front doorstep and is like, I need help, you need to save me, because she's been, you know, injured during the hunt, and she ends up saving her because she wants revenge on the people who killed her parents and killed her family. So that's basically what that book is about. This one, I will say, was very, very well written, and I thought it was such a unique spin on the Greek mythology world. The only reason I'm not saying it's one of my favorites is because I'm not the biggest fan or the biggest nerd or lover, I should say lover of Greek mythology. It's fine, it's cool. I think it's really intriguing and it's fascinating, and I obviously still like to read it. Otherwise I wouldn't have picked this book up. But it's not my favorite type of fantasy books. So that's the only reason why I'm saying it wasn't one of my favorites, just for personal reasons. But after I read it, I will say that it was really well done. It was really well written. I loved the characters. I loved the story. That was all great and fine. It just is not my little, I don't know, I guess I just prefer fairies and elves and that kind of fantasy world versus Greek mythology and things to do with the gods and stuff like that. So that's just my personal preference, but I know a lot of people really enjoyed this book. Again, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It just is not my cup of tea. Okay, so the third book that I read in February, because it just came out, was A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas, and you guys already know that's like 20 stars, if not like 100 out of 5, because the feels with this book, if you have not read it, I don't know where you've been. I mean, if you love fantasy, just go read this book. Turn off this video. I will be okay. You need to go get this book and you need to read this series. If you read the series but you haven't read that book yet, you are severely behind. I have, as you can see, a whole Sarah J. Maas like corner, and I don't even care that it doesn't go with my color scheme and my color-coded books, because Sarah J. Maas is she's just brilliant. And I know her stuff is talked about so much and she's so popular, and we do need to support, you know, other authors too, but I can't help it. I just die every time I read one of her books. They hit me in such a visceral place. And if they don't hit you in that place, I don't know. I don't know. I just, as you can tell, I was not okay reading this book. And Tony had to deal with this while I read it, because I pre-ordered it and I waited for it to come in. I shouldn't have done that though. I should have just gone to the bookstore and got it on the day that it came out. But I was so afraid they would be sold out, so I ordered it ahead of time. Anyway, I'm rambling. If you don't know, A Court of Silver Flames is the 5th book, technically 5th book in the series. A Court of Frost and Starlight is kind of a novella. It doesn't really have to go with the story. It's just kind of a separate thing, but I mean, you might as well read it because it's so short. But A Court of Silver Flames takes place probably like 7 months, maybe a year or so after everything happens, you know, with all the other stuff in the series. I don't want to give anything away if you have read those but haven't read A Court of Silver Flames just yet. But if you are familiar, this book actually, we read through Nesta's perspective, which is Farah's sister. And Farah is the main character in the series. If you haven't read this series, Farah is the main character we kind of follow and read mostly through her perspective throughout the entire series. So this book is actually through Nesta, her sister's perspective. And I will say, Nesta, I think I can speak for almost every one of us who's read this series, that we really did not like Nesta for a very long time. We could understand some of everything that she was going through, but there were a lot of things she did and said that were not forgivable. So I was excited for this book, don't get me wrong, but I was not particularly looking forward to reading through Nesta's perspective. She was probably one of my least favorite characters throughout the series. But this is the brilliance of Sarah J. Maas, because she did this book through Nesta's perspective, and now I can say, hands down, Nesta is probably one of my favorite characters, and this for sure is definitely my favorite book out of the series. Like, hands down, there's not a question that that is the best book of this series, because I don't know how this author does it. I just don't, because she made you feel so many things, and if any of you suffer or know someone who suffers from depression and anxiety and post-traumatic stress, you know what I'm talking about when you read this book. It will make you sob. It really will, because I myself have not dealt with post-traumatic stress, and I don't personally know, I mean, no one's ever told me if they have. I don't personally know anyone who suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, but I do suffer from depression, and it runs in my family. And I do suffer from anxiety, and that runs in my family. I have someone in my family who suffers from bipolar disorder. I understand mental health, and when I read this book, I felt so seen and so heard. And the fact that Sarah J. Maas was able to write such an intense, because you'll know what chapters I'm talking about if you've read this book. She writes such an intense scene, just whole few chapters. And it's not that anything major, I mean, something major does happen to trigger all of this, obviously. But along those chapters, it's not as if, someone has died or anything in particular bad, like life-altering, shattering has happened. But yet you feel it so deep in your gut. Everything that Nesta is feeling and everything that she's gone through and all of these thoughts that she's having, I have had in my head. These thoughts of, you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough, you will never amount to anything. And it's not as if people told us this. It's not as if Nesta had a very, harrowing childhood. I mean, she had some very traumatic things happen to her, but she acted like a brat for most of it. And again, it was dealing with a lot of that stuff, I understand, but I need to film a whole video of just about this series, because I know I can go on and on and on and on about this series and this book in particular. But I just wanted to say how brilliant I thought and how well written and how well done it was to portray and to show depression and these thoughts that people have in their heads. And it's not even like it's, things are triggered a lot of the time, yes, but sometimes, with panic attacks especially, the wind could be blowing wrong one day. I mean, the thing about it is, if you've never experienced it or you don't have a loved one and you've never seen them experience this, it's hard to understand. But if you read this book, we'll start to feel some of what us have felt who've been through things like that. And I love the fact that she does not rely on putting this character in a relationship to get her through her depression and all of her things. She is finding friends. She is finding her way in life. She is trying to figure it out. She's trying to figure herself out. And she's not relying on all of these other external things to get her through. She needed that push and she needed that help from her friends in these relationships that she has and her family. But it took her wanting to get there for her to finally start to get better, if that makes sense. And I don't think I've seen other books handle this nearly as well as she has. I'm not saying they're not out there. I'm sure that they are. I just haven't read them yet. If you do have any, fictional books that the characters deal with depression or anxiety and things like that, and they handle it very, very well, please let me know, because I would love to read them. Let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions or recommendations on that. But I just felt with all the books that I have read, me personally, this one has handled it so well. It portrayed it so realistically without any, fluff and pomp. It wasn't, I want to kill myself. It was just, I don't feel good enough. I don't feel worthy enough. I don't deserve anything. I just want to cease to exist. And a lot of us with depression have had those thoughts. Even if you don't have depression, some people have experienced that. And I think it's super important that we talk about those things. And I really thought Sarah J. Maas handled that so well. And I've been talking nonstop about this book since I read it. So if you haven't already and you're interested in fantasy, please read this series. If you have read this series but you haven't picked up the latest book yet, the Court of Silver Flames, please read it. Go to a library, pick it up, just borrow it from somebody if you have to, because it was just so heartbreaking, but so good. So yeah, I'm done. I'm off my Sarah J. Maas pedestal. I'm, my soapbox, but let's move on to the next book. Okay, so this next book I read, actually, I think kind of fell over into March. Like I finished it in March, but it was a very, very long book. So I started it in February, like early February, I think. And then finally finished it beginning of March, because it was an audiobook and I listened to it in my car. It is Legendborn by Tracy Dion. This book is about a girl named Bree who has recently lost her mother in a car accident, and it was a hit and run. So, her and her dad still don't really have answers as to what actually happened to her or how the accident happened. But she did pass away, and Bree is only 16, and she was in the process of trying to go to UNC in North Carolina. It's a college, so it's an early college program for high school seniors or juniors, but it's an early college program where she can go to the campus and be taking classes, earning college credits, but staying on campus and kind of finishing out her high school degree as well. So her and her best friend end up going, even though her mother has passed away, and her mother, you know, before she died, had said she didn't want her to go. But she was very protective of Bree, and Bree just wanted to get out of her small town, you know, who can blame her, and wanted to go to college and start kind of this whole process and this whole journey of her life and independence. So she ends up going, and she starts to see things that are not normal. And I should mention, she is a Black girl. She starts seeing things that she shouldn't be seeing, you know, as far as mystical beings and stuff like that. She'd never seen them before. She becomes friends with a guy named Nick, who is white, and starts to tell her about the secret society that is on campus, and she wants to infiltrate them because it turns out they know they either had something to do with, or they know what has happened to her mother. So she wants to join them and figure out, first of all, what the heck it is she's seeing around campus. All of these mystical, magical things, you know, she doesn't realize magic is real. She wants to understand that, but she also really wants to figure out what has happened to her mother, because she feels deep down that something is not quite right. It wasn't just a hit and run. There had to have been something wrong. So Nick is actually an ex-member of this society, and it's an all-white group. There's never been a person of color in this group. So she obviously feels very out of place and is trying to understand what it is that's happening. And what she finds out within the secret society is they are an order of descendants from the Knights of the Round Table. So King Arthur and Merlin, Merlin's being the magical wielders mostly. King Arthur, and Nick is actually the descendant of King Arthur himself. So he had, you know, left the group, but he's helping her now come into the group because he wants to help her figure out what's happened to her mother as well. So he kind of brings her into the group, and she starts to figure out all these things and what her place in it is and what everything has to do with her mother. So this book was really interesting. It was very, very long, and maybe it was just because I listened to it as an audiobook that I felt it was a little bit longer than if I had probably read it in paperback or hardback form. But it was still interesting. I thought the characters were really well developed. I loved everyone, you know, as much as you're supposed to. I thought, you know, a lot of it was really intriguing. Again, this new take on like Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and stuff. And again, just like with lore, this isn't totally my cup of tea, but the story was really interesting. And for this one, I do want to read the next book because I believe she's writing another one for it, which would make sense, but I won't say more. But I did enjoy this one. I just felt like it was a little bit slow at parts. So I feel like there were a lot of things that we probably didn't really need so much. And I think that's why it felt so much longer, because there were a lot of downtime and a lot of low moments. But I think the author did a really, really good job of building this world and creating this new look and this new perspective on the Knights of the Round Table, because I really haven't read too many books that deal with it. I know they're out there. I just haven't, again, personally read it because I haven't really been that interested in it. But this one sounded really interesting, and I heard high praise for it, so I really wanted to check it out. I would still recommend this book to anybody who wants to read it, even if you aren't a fan of the King Arthur and Merlin and all those kinds of stories and stuff. But this one was really intriguing, and I like the new spin on it, and I like the diversity that's in it and how that interplays within the story as well, because that was really fascinating, and that I could totally see happening. A lot of things in this story happening, magic aside. So I definitely still highly recommend this to anyone who wants to go and pick it up and read it, because it really was that. It was great. Me personally, my preferences as far as revolving around specific things in the stories. not necessarily my thing, but I really did enjoy the story. And again, I will be reading the next few in the series. Okay, so those were all the books that I read in February as far as published book goes. If you're new here and you don't know, I am also an associate literary agent, so I read a lot of manuscripts throughout my day and throughout the months. So this month in February, I read 3 manuscripts in total. So altogether, I read 7 books, technically, in the month of February. Now I don't really include books that I started in February. Sometimes I'll usually put them in the place of like where I finished them. So those were the manuscripts I read in February. I don't believe I was doing any edits this month. Even March I did edits. I know in January I did edits. Yes. So technically 3 full manuscripts in February. Yeah, we'll go with that. Okay. So jumping right into March, the first book I read in the month of March, I'll say that the first 2 is Siege and Storm and Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. These are the 2nd and 3rd books respectively in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. As you all know, hopefully you know, the show is coming out on Netflix later this month, so I really wanted to speed read through them and read the trilogy and then read the duology and then read the 2nd duology, because Leigh Bardugo writes a ton of books on the Grishaverse, but I love it. They were great. So I just wanted to kind of put the 2nd and 3rd books together because it was part of the series. They're basically, I don't want to say the same, no series is the same, no books in the series, but it's hard to explain, you know, subsequent what happens in the next books when you don't want to ruin the one before it. So basically with Shadow and Bone, we follow Alina Starkov for most of the series, I believe through the whole series, and she finds out that she is a sun summoner, which is brand new to Ravka, which is the place where all this takes place, is this new world. And there are magic wielders, there are different types of magic wielders, so there are Corporal Kai, Ethereal Kai, and one more. So Corporal Kai, Ethereal Kai, and Material Kai. Yeah, I'm just gonna read that off because you know, it's just easier to do it that way. So each of those categories, you know, they're able to do something different. The Corporal Kai usually are like the top of the top, like the best of the best, essentially. Not really, but you know, that's how they kind of view it. There are like heart renders who can, you know, start and stop pulses or heartbeats and stuff, can slip you into unconsciousness, you know, different things like that. And are, you know, the Ethereal Kai, so tide makers, you know, go with the tides and do the water and all that stuff. And the Material Kai can work with specific materials, obviously. So all this is based basically off of like very Russian based, the different names and the types of magic and stuff. But basically we follow Alina, and she is a sun summoner. So she is the first of her kind, really. And she is kind of taken under the wing of the Darkling. And the Darkling obviously summons dark. So they kind of go hand in hand together, and he's teaching her how, well, he oversees her teachings of becoming a sun summoner and helping him eradicate the Fold, which is a part of their world that is like an abomination where all of these creatures live in the darkness, and the Darkling, obviously his powers don't work there because it's already dark. So the sun summoner is supposed to help him kind of eradicate the Fold and basically take over Ravka again, become, you know, this great, that rule all of Ravka essentially with him. So that's kind of the basis of the whole trilogy. So I don't want to say more than that for the 2nd and 3rd book. This series overall was okay. Introduced you to the world, which was great, but I will say I did not care for a lot of the main characters. I don't, I'm sorry, but Alina was a little annoying a lot of the time, and Mal just wasn't, I don't know, Mal just annoyed me too, who is like supposed to be her love interest and everything, her best friend that she grew up with in the orphanage, Alina did. And the Darkling was great, don't get me wrong, love the Darkling, but pretty much Alina and Mal, everyone they focused on for the most part was just a little annoying, and I don't know. I thought it was a great setup to the whole world, and each book definitely got better. Her writing style got better, and the story developed further. It got better and better. But I will say, So I'm gonna jump right into the next book I read, the next two actually, and that is the Six of Crows, and I don't have that one with me, I borrowed it. And then Crooked Kingdom, which is the second book in the duology, right after Six of Crows. So these take place in the same universe. So think of it like Marvel universe and how everyone kind of has their own story, and then you have one where they all get together. Well, this one is a separate story, but it's still in the same universe. It's still in the same world. We still have the Grisha. We still are in Ravka, but we follow a whole different group of characters and a whole other story. And this takes place, I believe, 2 or 3 years after the Shadow and Bone trilogy. So this takes place a time period after and with a whole new group of characters and in another location. So Shadow and Bone took place in Os Alta mainly, and like near the Fold and stuff. And that was actually in Ravka. And then this one, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, actually takes place in Ketterdam and Kerch. So this one is in a different part of the world, but still the same world. We still got Grisha, we still got people with magic, all this other stuff. And you don't necessarily have to read Shadow and Bone in order to read Six of Crows, but you do appreciate it and you catch on a lot faster to what is happening and understanding the world itself. You could easily pick it up if you wanted to with Six of Crows. Again, you just appreciate and you're quicker to pick things up because you understand what they're talking about. Just like in Marvel, when when you watch a Marvel show and they're talking about the incident, you know exactly what they're talking about from watching the movies. So it's along the same vein as that. So that's why I tell people you should still read Shadow and Bone trilogy before reading Six of Crows, but you don't have to if you really don't want to. Because I will say, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, hands down, 5-star across the board. So much better than Shadow and Bone. So much better. There's no question about it. Six of Crows actually, so like I said, it takes place about 2 or 3 years after the trilogy of Shadow and Bone ends. And this takes place in Kerch and like Ketterdam. And basically we're following 6 people, Six of Crows, who are part of a gang essentially. Mostly all of them, kind of. They know the gang well. And they're led by Kaz Brecker. Baby Kaz, love Kaz. And they are kind of taken in. So Kaz is given this job of a heist, essentially, of rescuing and getting this prisoner out of a place that has never been penetrated before and never been overtaken. And he gathers up his gang of crows, and there are 6 of them. So now you understand the title. 6 of the Crows. Gathers up all of them to help him perform this heist so that they all can get paid, all can get rich, and all go on and live their merry lives. But yeah, so that's basically the premise of Six of Crows. Crooked Kingdom takes place literally right after Six of Crows does. So you kind of end up you follow that whole story. You follow Kaz Brecker and Inej. Inej is my girl. She is fantastic. So Kaz, Inej, and then we have Nina and Matthias and Jesper. He is the sharpshooter of the group. He is awesome too. And then we follow Wyland. So that's all 6 of them, 6 of the Crow babies. And I love them so much. And I am looking forward to the show because of the Crows. That's all I'm gonna say. And I am so upset that they still haven't had the Crows show up in the as much in the trailers. And I understand what they have said is that a lot of their story is very spoilery for the rest of the show, but they're in it just as much as Lena and the Darkling and her story and their whole thing. I don't know how exactly the show is gonna do this. I haven't looked too much into it because I know Six of Crows takes place a few years after the last book of Shadow and Bone. So I don't know exactly how it's gonna work with the show, if they're gonna place it on the same timeline, or if it's gonna say, it's in the future, or what. I don't know. So I'm excited to see how they handle it. I will say, like I said, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, 5 stars across the board. If you want to read that without reading the Shadow and Bone trilogy, you definitely can, like I mentioned before. But you are quicker to pick up on it, and I feel like you appreciate it more. Because Shadow and Bone was not as good, so you appreciate this story a lot better. Okay, so the last book that I read in March is actually an audiobook. I always have at least one every month, if not two, because I had two this month. It's called The Shadow Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. So this book was interesting. I picked it up because I realized this about myself. I love dark romances. I don't know why. I just do. I think they're cool. I think they're fun. But I will say Tony is a little scared of me after I told him that I realized this about myself and then telling him this story that I was reading. So this one is about a girl who lives in this kingdom, and their king is called the Shadow King. So she, being who she is, a very dark person, she killed the first boy she ever loved because he didn't love her back. So she decides she wants the best of the best for herself. So she wants to woo the Shadow King, marry him, have him fall in love with her, get married to him, and then kill him and take the kingdom for herself because she wants to be queen by herself without a king. You can see why Tony is a little nervous about my taste in books and my taste in stories. But this one was really good. It was definitely very cheesy, very typical of a lot of like dark romances and stuff, but I enjoyed it. It was a good time. It was, I don't know what else to say about it. Because she obviously, you know, like is coming into this and she's like, I'm gonna do this. This is my plan. And of course she meets him and she starts to get to know him and starts to fall in love with him and all these things. And she's learning more and more about him. He's learning about her. And all of these multiple things are happening at the same time. And it's very, very cheesy. And I wish she had more of a motivation going into this, like trying to get, you know, the king to fall in love with her, besides just her wanting a kingdom for herself. I wish she had a little bit more motivation. But you know, beggars can't be choosers. And this one was pretty good. It was cheesy and perfect for what I needed. It was just straight up, you know, what I needed at the moment, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. So if you like that kind of stuff, I do recommend this. Be prepared. It's definitely not the best you'll ever read, but it's perfect if you want like a guilty pleasure read, something quick, something easy. This one was definitely fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So hopefully you will too if you like that kind of thing. But just don't tell your partners, you know, the types of books you're interested in. Otherwise they will become fearful if you say you enjoyed this book, because mine has. Okay, so that was the last published book I read in March. So March, I actually read a lot more manuscripts. My agency participated in PitMad on Twitter. So we had a ton of submissions into our slush pile. So I have been reading a ton of manuscripts. So in total, I read 5 manuscripts, technically 6 manuscripts in the month of March. The 6th one was a reread for a client that we have currently. She just finished her revision, so we were rereading it, making sure everything was good to go before we start pitching it to publishers. In total, 5 manuscripts. So I read technically 11 books in the month of March. And I'm pretty proud of myself for saying that, because I didn't realize, I don't really keep track very well of the manuscripts that I read so much. So it wasn't until I sat down before this video to figure out how many, like which manuscripts I read and how many I read, that I realized, holy crap, yeah, I read that many. That makes sense. I was super busy in the month of March. So April is probably shaping up to be, it is shaping up to be just as busy. I am currently reading King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. So this is the second duology for the Grishaverse. And Rule of Wolves just came out recently. So I am trying to finish this bad boy before I go pick that one up. This one is not going to be part of the show, is what I've heard. So I haven't been like rushing to finish this. I've been savoring it a little bit more. I do want to finish this. I have a ton of manuscripts already on my plate that I'm trying to finish, on top of ones that I know I want to request pretty soon. So I'm going to be reading those, and then reading other manuscripts that the other agents at my agency need second opinions for. So I'm going to be continuing to be busy in the month of April. And I love it. I really do. And I don't mean that sarcastically. I realize it came off sarcastically. I do love it so, so much. My eyes do get a little crossed at the end of the day, but I do love it. It's very tiring. I mean, as all jobs are. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see I've been posting a little bit about that. So love my job. And if you love your job, I'm so, so happy for you, because it's very rare now. And it's very rare at all for anybody to find jobs that they absolutely love, which it hurts to say that, but it is rare, I'm finding. So I'm so proud of you. If you have a job that you love, great, stick with it. But still, even if you have a job that you love, make sure that you're taking time for yourself and doing things that you love to do outside of your job, because it's so important to keep a lot of things separate. And it's just important to take that time away and take that break. You don't want to burn out. You don't want to go too fast and too hard and end up hating what you do. So take the time for you. Have a self-care day if need be, or even just an hour. Take an hour for yourself. Do things you need to do outside of what you usually do for work. Do something else that you love. Find another hobby if you don't have one. Just do something. Hang out with people, hang out with loved ones. Do something else for a little bit, because it really will help, and it will help you not to burn out so quickly and so fast. I'm finding I have to do that for myself. It's a bit of a struggle, but you got to figure it out, and I'm figuring it out, so it's all good. Yeah, so that's it for this video, guys. Thanks again for joining me. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. I would really, really appreciate it. Go around my channel for more bookish videos and other content coming soon. Hit the like button if you liked this video. I would really appreciate it. And leave a comment down below if you've read any of these books, if you're excited for the Shadow and Bone series as much as I am. Tell me which one you like better too, Shadow and Bone or Six of Crows. Which series was better for you? I would love to hear your opinion. Yeah, let me know what you guys are reading too down in the comments. But other than that, I hope you all have a great week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.